audience that wasn't necessarily poetry at the time. Silent poetry itself is a spoken word form of poetry that is largely influenced by the free verse. So during the performances tonight, we ask that you guys be respectful. As many of you know, this event is uncensored, and we'll hit on some topics that are going to be probably harder to hear or not what you're used to. Also, if you have not checked into the event yet, please go to the MyUSU app, search slam poetry, join the event. Don't check. There's like a check-in button, like where it has you type in numbers and that one. Just join the event. It helps us know how many people came so we can plan for next year and future events. So to start, we're going to have a couple students here at USU do some slam poetry. First, we're going to start with Cole Lancaster, and then we'll have Sue Baxter. So we'll go with that time.
Hi everyone. How's it going? So I definitely wrote this poem like super last minute, so please don't judge me too harshly. But it's called Dear You Lost State. The first and only ground rule for tonight is that I'm here, I'm queer, and I will be heard. So dear Utah State, I'd say it's a little too late for you to start getting up to date on important issues. You say all the glory lies in your true backing, but why is it that I don't get as much fucking cheer as my straight counterparts? The once great roar of the crowd diminishes into the night as I have my moment on the A block. You say you're my ally, but why am I so ashamed of walking around on campus holding hands with my partner? I don't want to be doing a walk to humiliate myself, but rather be excited to wear the USU emblems on my clothing with pride. This performative allyship must go away and cannot stay. While it's away, let's work on creating an inclusive atmosphere for all. An inclusive atmosphere is more than using buzzwords on posters and ads. And fighting to be anti-racist, day in and day out to dismantle white supremacy. We must attack these microaggressions with and understand why they are happening to this day. Whenever we start to talk about these quote-unquote controversial issues, no one is ready to hear the facts and truth. But when they are brought up in conversation, we are told you have to be quote-unquote nice to us. And important social injustices are turned down again and again and again. No BLM, no land acknowledgement for Native peoples, no LGBTQ rights, just to name a few. Administration creates policies that impact all students, but especially marginalized populations. I'm so sick and tired of this goddamn disconnect between students and USU admin. They say they want to hear and implement student voices, but they only reflect their own egotistical agendas. The university asks us to be our genuine selves, but I find myself code switching to act like my hetero counterparts to quote-unquote protect them. I don't know about you, but this has caused me to lose my sense of belonging on this campus. My mental health is only comprised of depression and anxiety these days. The lack of mental health resources is even more depressing. People need to start doing their work and educating themselves before taking the emotional well-being out of a community to navigate a system who constantly puts policies against marginalized students. We need to break down this uniformity and work on celebrating our diversity. This poem is not a thing of hate, but your call to action. My challenge to you is what's next. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sophia Baxter. I'm a senior here at Utah State, and this piece is called Breaking Bread. I am an alchemist, a wizard, and a goddess in addition. My recipes have pedigrees to rival Excalibur, forged with cast iron and Pyrex in ancient days. I've got personal experiments in flavor that will make your head spin like a possessed baby, you exorcist. I make soups that taste like the validation you never got from your parents. Sautés better than your first kiss, and casseroles so divine, they will make you see God. See, Some people will talk about women in the kitchen like it's some chaste cloister for demure feminine types. But they don't know a goddamn thing about what women in kitchens can do. Ms. Gallo wasn't so much a woman as she was a measured inferno. Gallo sees me as your number, she told me when we first met. It's almost the same word for bite. Once a week, she made a feast in a studio apartment with nothing but a mini fridge on a hot plate. Every time with the same choreography script. Sister, the food I make is nothing special, incredibly simple, but so very good. Do you know why? I didn't know why. And she looked me in the eyes, pedal to the metal, engine roaring at 109 miles an hour. Because it's not heart. Ms. Gallo had a heart, and bark, and bite, conviction. You could taste it in the garlic and cabbage. Once Ms. Gallo invited me to another dinner with newcomers who didn't know the drill. She bared her teeth and started in. You know, the food I make, nothing special, incredibly simple, but so very good. Do you know why? They didn't know why. I knew why. In those days when I tried to take up as little space as possible, I felt my shoulders roll back a little, and I pressed on the gas. Because it's got heart. It's got heart. It's got heart. It's got heart. In my kitchen, in my house, I make elixirs to ease the strain. I preside over a congregation of the hungry and the living. I comfort them with the work of my hands, and when they leave with heart. See, I'm not a product of environment or upbringing. Never was. I am only what I eat. I am the group endeavor of women and wildfires that taught me how to live and give life. To play with knives and never flinch. They knew the truth that a kitchen is no cloister. It's the void before the Big Bang. Da Vinci's workshop, a field medic's tent in the midst of a trench, and I belong there because I belong everywhere that I am. So if you tell me to go back to the kitchen with sneers and thoughts of my servitude and your pleasure, then let's just say I know a thing or two about knives and hearts and how to slice the muscle clean. Thank you.
Okay, can we get another round of applause for our two poets right there? Okay, now I'm pleased to introduce you to Asia. Since 2009, Asia Sampson has performed at over 2,000 college shows in over 48 states. He's been featured on HBO Deaf Poetry, TEDx, Button Poetry, So Far Sounds, Story Conference, NPR's Tiny Desk Contest, and has worked with companies such as Nokia Mobile and most recently, the US military. He currently holds the record for the highest booked poetry act in the college market, winning the awards of APCA Performer of the Year and 3 times as the APCA Spoken Word Artist of the Year. Please give a round of applause for Asia.
So think back to when you were a child, and on the count of 3, yell out what you wanted to be when you grew up. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, I heard somebody say chef over here. Who said chef? Somebody, that was you. What did you want to be? I heard you. Lawyer, dope. What did you want to be? You don't know. That's the best answer ever. Got you open mind. Do you know what I mean? Yeah? What was yours? Doctor. That's cool. Y'all want to know what I wanted to be? I wanted to be a heart surgeon / architect / painter / ninja. Like, that's a thing, right? Like, think about it. I would design and build a hospital where I work, saving lives by day while assassinating them by night. Only the bad guys, obviously. Okay, fine, mostly. Then use the blood of those I've slain to paint beautiful landscapes on my porch every Sunday. Okay, that's disturbing, but it's totally doable. And I kept believing that until Maya, a second grader, punched me in my third grade stomach, and I let out such a loud scream, I realized I would make the most horrible ninja ever, but that's okay, because I could still be a heart surgeon / architect / painter. And I kept believing that until Mrs. Mercutio, my high school counselor, told me my grades were as low as my parents' income, so I better think of something else besides med school. To this day, I wonder if she's still there, flicking off the light switch inside our children to keep them from being brilliant, but that's okay, because I could still be an architect / painter. And I kept believing that until my father, who's an architect, said it's really hard to find a job as an architect. Wait, no. Until they said artists will always starve. Wait, no. Until be realistic. Until find stability. Until I had no slashes left to keep tabs of all of my dreams. As children, we transformed blankets into tents and explored the safaris of our bedrooms by flashlight. We wore goggles and snorkels in the bathtub, believing this was an ocean filled with wonders and sea creatures we will discover when we dive. We tied towels around our necks and flew off the coffee table, pointing to the spot where we needed to land to break our record. We drew pictures of ourselves, the astronauts / teachers, the ballet dancers / rock stars. I kept mine at the bottom of my drawer for safekeeping, only to find them last week, hidden beneath mortgage papers and credit card statements and the work badge I used to enter the building of a job I never wanted. How much further was I willing to bury who I was meant to become just to live a life that's steady? How long have I muffled the voices of those drawings when they tried to tell me steady is just a word we like to use anytime someone asks, how's your life? And we're too ashamed to give the actual answer. In 2006, my doctor looked me in the eyes and told me I had testicular cancer, to which I replied, yay, sounds like a ball. He didn't laugh. Instead, he says, you understand that after we remove one testicle, you'll only have one testicle left? And I said, okay, then I'll just change my name to One Hung Lo, because I'm Asian. Still nothing. Instead, he says, you might not be able to have children after this. You might want to consider having your sperm frozen before the surgery. And I said, great. I will never look at frozen yogurt the same way ever again. He didn't think any of my jokes were funny, but how could you not find them funny? You're talking about me, the guy who once had dreams of doing ambitious things and is now teaching telemarketing to students and retired bankers, the guy who was taught that being a man meant being fully equipped, and now you want to come snip and separate the Wonder Twins, the guy who will later tell his friends, and they'll respond by texting him a picture of a wonton saying, hey, don't worry, we found you a replacement, the guy who's already so skinny that those automatic doors at the grocery store can't detect me, and I have to wave my arms and jump like a madman until it opens, and now you're saying I may have to go through chemo, which will make me skinnier than I already am. Damn, how is that not hilarious? Yeah, you might not find that funny, but I can guarantee you that whoever's piloting my fate decided to raid the minibar, lock the cockpit doors, and is hysterically pissing their pants by now. Have you ever wondered why maniacal laughter is never included in the stages of grief? Maybe because it doesn't last that long. Maybe it's just a parenthesis, nestled between denial and anger, hold the grin between my clenched teeth, long enough to get the hell out of his office so I can cry on the shoulders of my car seat. How did I get here? I've never been one to go rogue and write my life past the margins. I once made billboards of my milestones and staggered them along my road to success, and now I'm wondering at what point did I lose the concrete beneath my steps. Maybe it's when my parents took that first flying exit out of their marriage. Maybe it's when I took that detour out of college, thinking there had to be a faster way, only to find myself going in circles until the student loan light started blinking. Maybe I got tired of running on empty. Maybe it's why I took that desk job that promised me my own corner office. Maybe I couldn't tell if it was the tie or the slow death strangling my neck, working long hours, paying for a degree I never got. Maybe that's what led to this. Laying on the hospital bed, my eyes towards the God I was told was a God of promise, asking, are you laughing yet? Do you not see this? The heavy-handed nurse pushing the needle in and out of my skin, failing to find a vein for the IV, the machines beeping like an SOS distress signal, like maybe this is it for me, the rock bottom ending to a life spent falling, how funny that the last words I'll ever hear is a doctor saying he'll do his best to make the scar as minimal as possible, as if my prayers resided on that. I don't remember anything after. I just remember the fade to black. But I do remember this. Just before the darkness engulfed me like a confession booth, just before the anesthesia grabbed me by the veins to drag me to my sleep, I heard a voice say, "Don't you see? This is your out. Because how can you ask to be molded into the person you're meant to be and then question how it's being done now?" And when I woke up, I found myself here, standing on the stage, performing a poem where I get to say, I'm now 16 years cancer-free. I got a sexy battle scar slash beneath my belly. Oh, and remember what they said about me not being able to have children? Well, I should also mention, I now have a son much more perfect than any poem that can ever come from me. My son, who hides fruit snacks in the crevices of the couch and eats them again 2 days later. My son, who has this weird thing about placing stickers over his nipples. My son, who gets to pick out a book for us to read before he goes to bed, and eventually figured out that the longer the book, the longer he gets to stay up. No, I will not read you the entire Twilight trilogy. Now, put that back in mommy's drawer before you ruin it. My son, who, actually, let me tell you the story real quick. So, my son's 8 years old, so obviously he's potty trained, right? But when he first was potty trained, I think he was like 5 or so, he was at that point where they couldn't wipe themselves yet, right? Like, you know how that is, and we have to go do it for him. And this is how I realized that I'm raising a kid that is totally a different generation than the times that I grew up in, right? Because this dude was on the toilet, like, taking a shit, right? And when he finished, I kid you not, this kid yells out, "Alexa, come wipe me." I'm like, no, dude, Alexa doesn't do that. My son, who manages to leave Legos on the floor in the exact same spot I'll be walking in the middle of the night, so when the top of those Antichrist toys meets the bottom of my holy foot, I have to hold my mouth to silence the screams, because if I wake him, he won't go back to sleep for the rest of my life. If you think I'm overreacting, let me ask you, have you ever stepped barefoot on Legos? Yeah? Trust me, it hurts a lot more than having a testicle removed, but I still let him have them, because every time we put a new Lego set together, he immediately takes it apart and rearranges all the pieces, and when I tell him that's not how it looks in the picture, he replies by saying, "It's okay, this way is better." Sometimes fate has a way of dismantling our lives to tell us it's okay, this way is better. May we all be rearranged and rebuilt like that. May the billboards of our plans be shredded by the wind. So I'll ask you again, think back to when you were a child and the answer you gave when someone asked what you wanted to be when you grew up. Think of how quick those answers came, held together by slashes before the world tried tearing them apart. Yeah, we may no longer want what we wanted back then, but it doesn't mean our hearts are meant to settle for something we don't want now, because somewhere you're 6 years old, still filling in the blanks of all the things you've ever wanted to be. You that could be firefighter slash veterinarian. You that could be superhero slash fashion designer. You that could be master chef slash PlayStation gold medalist. You, the wide-eyed wanderers with your gaze towards the horizon. You with the impossible mountains to climb. Do it for the gram. Bring your slash back. Place them between everything that makes up who you are, whoever that might be. Claim the amazing you become and drop all the which no longer fits you. Me, I am Asia Sampson, writer slash performer slash cancer survivor slash husband slash father slash professional napper. No, I never became an architect, but I found much more joy in building people up. No, I never became a heart surgeon, but I try to write poems that cut through the chest and get to what's broken. And no, I never became a ninja. Actually, that's not true. I'm totally a ninja. I'm like the most awesome ninja, fighting my best fight when the darkness comes. So tell the world to keep an eye out, because somewhere I'll be lurking, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and when I do, I promise you will never see me coming. What's going on, Utah State? Make some noise! Oh my God, you guys, listen, you have no idea how excited I am to be here, man. Because, okay, first of all, you're gonna have to excuse. So last week, we went on vacation, and we actually went to Utah for vacation. I told my wife, why don't you just line it up with my show? And then I got it, she was like, well, because spring break with my kid and everything. So we went to Utah last week. We were in Salt Lake City, then drove down to Moab, and I'm from Florida. Do you guys have any idea how dry your air is here? Like, anybody from like the East Coast? Coast, like, or like the South or anything? Really? Raise your hand. No, for real. Shout it out. Word. Where are you from? Houston. Okay, it's still kind of, yeah, somewhat, right? How about you? Boston. I was just there too. Like, dude, yeah, Boston is insane also. Like, I had to go to Maine, and they had the little tiny flight. Yeah, see, we were just talking about it over there. And they put me in this little tiny ass plane. There was only 3 of us in this plane, and like the pilot turned around like, "You guys ready to go?" I'm like, "What the hell kind of?" Okay, anyway, neither here nor there. Where are you at? Where are you from?
Washington, D.C.
Washington. Oh, that's what's up. Okay, you guys have the Commanders now. Yeah, it's very humid. Yeah. And so we were in Utah last week, and then I started getting like these like congestion. Now, somebody tell me, because I haven't gotten a response to this yet. I heard that like it can get so dry that like your sinuses will clog up, right? So then you can't like smell, and when you can't smell, it's hard to taste. That in areas like this, they tend to over-season the food so that people can taste it. Is that true? Is that a myth then? Because they do that in airplanes, because it gets hot, you with that kind of elevation. That's why you get pretzels, because it's very salty. See, you know that, right? Yeah. But I heard that that's what they do here, but I don't know. That's why I'm like this. So if you hear me coughing up stuff, I'm still kind of expelling like all this stuff that I built up last week. But I love Utah. Like if it wasn't for your winters and your extremely hot summers, I would totally like live here, right? Like, because look, so I flew in today and then I landed, and then this is how I know, this is how you know you're in Utah, right? Like I went to go get my rental car. She's like, okay, here's a rental car, just bring it back full. No smoking, no vaping, no off-roading. And I'm like, dope, yeah. Like, because that's all you guys do is, like I actually run an off-road YouTube channel. It's like crazy. But so I love coming out here. So we were like off-roading and stuff last week. It's such a good time. And then now I'm like congested. But the reason I'm happy to be here is because doesn't it feel like COVID was such a long-ass time ago? Like, when it first started, right? You don't feel that? Like, it feels like millennia ago, but it was only like 2 years ago. And you guys were the only school, like one of only 3 schools that brought me here during the pandemic. And I don't know if you were here at that show, but when I came and performed, there were no tables. There were like chairs that were just like all separated from one another within like 6 feet of each other. And it was like a very, very strange like layout, but yet the crowd was so awesome. And then so tonight, being back here now and us being together again and not having to wear masks, and I can see you smiling, and I'm not doing virtual shows, that's why I'm excited to be here. So give it up for yourselves. Y'all ready for a poetry show? Yeah? Yeah. I don't need to tell y'all how to act. I don't need to tell y'all how to act. You guys know how to act when it comes to poetry shows, but I will tell you, feel free to act however you want. You can respond to my poem. Let's do this. I'm a poet, so let me think it's like a really good analogy. Let's try to treat this poetry show like sex. Yeah? Like think about it. Like if you and I are in the same room together, which we are, right? And I'm going in, son, right? Like I am throwing down. I'm screaming, I'm yelling your name, I'm giving you moves I've never given anybody before, like Shang-Chi type stuff, right? Like flying in the air with rings, and I'm doing all this, and you just lay there. This is gonna get awkward really quick. So throughout the show, you're more than welcome to laugh, you're more than welcome to cry. Any kind of energy you give me is the same kind of energy I'm gonna give right back. If you've never been to a poetry show before, I'm gonna teach you. You could yell stuff. You could yell stuff like speak, poet. You could yell that, right? You could yell go in, son, right? Or if you don't wanna scream, you could just do little things like, or ooh. Basically anything that lets me know you like it tells me I need to go harder. Do you see how this metaphor works? Yes? Yeah? All right. So let's do some poetry. Throughout the night, I'm going to be doing some haikus, all right? How many of y'all know what a haiku is? Haiku, anybody? All right. What's a haiku? That's right. So it's a Japanese poem made up of 3 lines, 5 syllables, followed by 7, followed by 5, or just do 17 syllables altogether. So these haikus might go over your head because you have to compact all these thoughts into just 3 lines of poetry so it can get really, really abstract. And you may not get it right now, but maybe later when you're like laying in bed, you're like, oh my God, I just got it. And like, wow, Asia, that was pretty deep, right? So I'm warning you, these are kind of deep, so don't feel too bad if you're not really like poetically inclined to like get some of this, but we're gonna do it anyway. So number 1, turn up, on fleek, Cash me outside. Stop texting me, Mom, you're 65. Ah, it's deep, isn't it? Oh my, for those that laugh, I love y'all. Because people sometimes just stare at me like, okay. Like, I love my haikus, you guys. I'm very overprotective of these. I've got 99 problems, but a testicle, I only have one. Just because I have small feet doesn't mean I have a small, let's skip that one, okay. I love my haikus. If you guys write haikus, write some hilarious ones and tag me online, I swear to God. I'm gonna do a poem for you guys. I don't know it by heart yet. I'll give you the background. So a long time ago, I wrote this poem called 90s Love, right? It was about comparing love to the era of the 90s, and Button Poetry got a hold of it, put it online, and it sort of kind of went viral, right? And people knew me for that poem, so I would go to the colleges and I would perform this poem, but every time I came back, every year to do a college, I've grown up to be a year older, but you guys stay the same age, right? And the generational gap started to grow wide. A lot of you probably weren't even born in the 90s, so a lot of you wouldn't get some of my references, so I stopped doing the poem. Then a couple years ago, I got a call from Nokia Mobile. If you don't know who Nokia is the old company that used to make those brick cell phones that they won't break at all, right? And they called me and they're like, hey, we're gonna do a limited release of our old, like, vintage phones. We're gonna update them, and could you write a poem about the year 2000s and just include Nokia in it? And I'm like, cool. And I'm like, so okay, that's the poem that I can start touring, because a lot of you will probably get a lot of these references. Just, okay, the thing is, this was written for a company, so you're gonna hear me do some product placement, okay? And people will be like, dude, don't you think that's selling out? And I'm like, I've always been a sellout, just nobody wanted to buy what I was selling back then. So all you have to do when you hear this poem, if you hear something that you remember growing up, then you make more noise than everybody else. Why? Because I don't want to feel old up here, all right? Help me out. And that's all you gotta do, all right? Y'all ready? I want to love you like 2000s. I want to love you like sport headbands and long white tees. I want to love you like FUBU jacket and Echo jeans. I want to love you like fitted caps with the tag still showing, and be all up in the club when the bows start throwing. Me with the Jersey Shore blowout and super clean white sneaks. You with a tight pink tracksuit with the word princess written in rhinestones across your butt cheeks. And just in case you want to skeet, I'll love you from the windows to the walls to the other side of the room that also has windows. You know what? I don't even know what that means. I want to love you like 2000s, back when love was as reliable as my very first cell phone. And for you, I'll spend the 99 cents to download your perfect ringtone, so go ahead and call me over and over again. I want to love you like I loved my Nokia 3310, the kind of love... It's funny because if I read it to them, it was just like, oh yeah, good, all right. But when I read it in a different tone, then it's like, okay. The kind of love you can drop over and over and they'll never crack. I want to love you like that. The kind of love where I don't need games to keep me fulfilled. Because unlike smartphones today, my Nokia only had one game you can play. Who needs an Angry Bird when I can love you like Snake? Easy to learn, but y'all remember Snake? Really? Right? That was such an addictive game. They need to put that like on iOS or something. Like, that was such a fun game. You'd go, anyway, yeah. Easy to learn, but hella hard to master. And the longer our love lasts, getting through it only gets harder, because love ain't supposed to be easy. Girl, please. It's supposed to be as difficult as texting I love you using only the number keys. Like, you gotta press the number 8 3 times just to get a letter V. Love is crazy. Love is insane, yo. Love is creating voicemail greetings that start with a 1-minute slow jam intro. And we both know it sounded amazingly lame, but not as lame as spending hours staring at my computer waiting for you to pop up on AIM. And after the long-awaited wait, the first thing I do to find out if this love is true is to see if I made it to your MySpace top 8. I want to love you like 2000s. See, for some of you who, okay, remember when Facebook went down last year? Like, remember for a little bit? I actually went and logged on to MySpace. I'm like, who the hell's in here right now? For those of you that didn't have MySpace ever, and the ones who do know, like when you have your friends list, right? Like on Facebook, right? But in MySpace, you get to choose the top 8 that you talk to the most. So if you're dating someone and you find out that you're not in their top 8, you can be like, oh, what the fuck, yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was a status thing. Like, you had to be on someone's top 8. I want to love you like 2000s. The kind of love as dramatic as primetime TV. I want our love to be awesome. Make you the Joey to my Dawson, the New York to my Flavor Flav, the Jon Stewart to my Stephen Colbert. I want to love you right there through everything, even through all the Grey's Anatomy type of pain. And just when I think all hope is was lost, I'll find you right behind me like Rachel to Ross saying, I got off the plane. Right? Best line like ever. I want to love you like 2000s. I want to love you like we love saying what's up and chillax. I want to love you like Puffy and everyone's videos telling you to take that, take that. Back when love was over the top as Missy Elliott wearing a shiny garbage bag, working it with fluorescent paint on her face. I want to love you the way Nelly loved Band-Aids, the way 182 loved to blink. I want to love you the way people love debating who was better, Backstreet Boys or NSYNC. The answer, Boys to Men. The answer is always Boys to Men. I want to love you like 2000s. I want to love you like the iPod Classic with a click wheel. And fill it with the 1,000 love songs we learned how to steal. I'm sorry, not steal. They said it was all free. That's why we spent all night on Napster downloading MP3s. Besides, who's really going to tell? I want to love you like the day my internet got upgraded to DSL. Because let's face it, 56K dial-up would always stall, messing up my house phone and disconnecting calls. But like love, I'll find a way to reach you wherever you are. I want to love you the way you love the 6-disc CD changer in the trunk of your car, and since you can't reach it, you better choose the 6 CDs you're willing to listen to with no doubt. Otherwise, you have to pull over to the side of the road just to change it out. But like love, we'll stop whatever we're doing just to keep things at its best, because love has always been about progress. Each day an exciting time to discover something new. So I want to love you like 2000s, where every bold step into the future is just a step for me to get closer to you. Now take that, take that. You guys make my job so fun, man. Like, you do, because like, I just did a couple shows in Maine a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, I'm never doing Maine again. Like, there is absolutely nothing there, and you can tell people are depressed, because when you do the shows, like 6 people will show up, and they're just like, it's cold. It was so freaking cold. Like, my nipples froze and fell off. I had to tell the students, I'm like, if you guys see a nipple outside, just return it to me. And I'm Asian, so for reference, it looks like a chocolate chip, right? So it's pretty cool. You guys good? Yeah? I wrote some haikus in honor of 2020. 2020 was such a screwed up, like these last 2 years, I know it's been crazy. And that's why I'm glad to be here and like not doing a virtual show and seeing all your faces. Like, you have no idea how that feels to me as an artist. And we've been grounded for the last 2 years. Like, we couldn't fly anywhere, do anything. And here we are being able to be out again and acting like it's, being like it's normal. And and I think we all needed that. So I wrote some poems, some haikus. 2020, you are like my ex-girlfriend, exciting but crazy. I wear masks. No, not the kind that stops viruses. I'm robbing a bank. I actually really like that one. I don't know why. If COVID teaches us anything, it's how to use unfriend button. Am I right? Like, people are so stupid. Like, I try to believe that people are not, right? But during the pandemic, and like even just that, like just people would come up with all these theories. It's just like, can we stop? Like, people would say, oh, you get it from like 5G cell towers and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, like the science is right there. And it's like, okay, perfect example. There was this debate going on, and you could tell me, all right, on Facebook like last week. And someone posted, they're like, Goofy, in Disney, right? Goofy dates Daisy, right? They're like, Goofy is not a dog. Goofy is a cow. And I'm like, what kind of motherfucking cows are you looking at, right? And then they're like, no, there's like a certain species of cow. And then they showed a picture with the droopy ears and the black, like that's why it's dating Daisy. And I'm like, no, Goofy is a dog. And I'm trying to fight this, and there's people who believe that Goofy is a cow. Now, I don't know if you believe that, but I'm like, dude, that is like the gateway to like flat earth thinking, right? Like, you should look it up. There's a debate going on that Goofy is actually a cow, and I don't know if it's been solved, but yeah. Let's talk about family for a second. Raise your hand if you have at least one other sibling, and keep it up. Keep it up if you have at least 2 or more. 3, 4, 5, this is where it gets fun. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So both of you. How many siblings do you have? 9. So there's 10 of you. And how many siblings do you have? 10. And so there's 11 of you? Yeah. That's like a small Philippine village. That's a lot of people. Well, there's 4 of us. Okay. It's me, my sister Kate, my brother George, my sister Carla. Now, this poem is from my sister Kate. Just to kind of let you guys know, the way, well, pre-pandemic, the way I used to work is whenever you guys are in school, I'm on the road, right? And whenever you guys are on break, I'm on break. So I love when you guys are on break, because then I get to sit at home, do nothing all day except scratch myself. Like, I literally have nothing to do with my time. Now, my wife works every day from 12 o'clock in the afternoon to 12 o'clock midnight, leaves me home alone. And, you know, we've been together since '04. And when you've been together with somebody for that long, like, you get used to them being kind of your balance, right? Like, when one person is not doing something and the other one's living their best life, like, the other one goes kind of crazy. So, like, if me and her, if I'm touring and she's working, all good. But, like, when I'm touring and she's, like, home alone, she gets kind of crazy. She gets lonely, right? And same thing when she's working and I'm just sitting at home. And she would go to work and she'd come home and, you know, the house would be like a mess. She'd look at me, I have like Cheetos all over my freaking shirt, right? And she's like, are you still wearing the same clothes you were wearing yesterday? I'm like, well, yeah, I didn't have to go anywhere, right? She's like, oh my God, that is so gross, right? At one point she looked at me, she goes, you know, sometimes this house is a lot more peaceful when you're not in it. And I'm like, well, damn, right? And she's like, well, I'm not trying to be mean. I could just tell you, like, you're starting to get crazy. Like, why don't you go do something? Go on vacation. This was summer 2012. And I looked at her, I'm like, well, where am I going to go? What am I supposed to do? She's like, I don't know. Go to California. Go visit your mom, brother, and sisters. So summer 2012, I flew from Florida, California, and I did the same thing in my mom's house. Just sat on the couch, and I waited till my sister got home from work, which is like, she got home like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. My sister will get home from work. She'll sit down next to me. We'll open our laptop. We'll watch TV and not say a single word to each other for like 4 hours, right? Like, have you ever been that close with somebody that you don't even need to talk, right? Like, you just love being around them so much, it didn't matter if you had anything to say, you just love being in their presence. Now, on the day that I was supposed to fly back to Florida, my sister Kate came home from work like really early, like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I looked at her, I'm like, what are you doing home? It's still early. And she's like, well, I've had this headache, and it hasn't gone away in like 3 days, and today I just couldn't take it anymore. Now, mind you, my sister never calls out of work. Like, she's one of those people, she has that work ethic that even when she's sick, she always finds a way to make it into work. And even then, like, she barely ever gets sick. She's fully healthy, nothing wrong with her. I mean, maybe except for her liver, because apparently her and Hennessy have a very important relationship. You know, in every family, there's always that one person whose job it is to get everybody drunk. Like, that's my sister. Like, she'll give shots to my grandma, and I'm like, Kate, you realize she's 89, and my sister will be like, well, she needs to man up. And the funny thing is, my grandma will outdrink all of us. I'm like, you forget, she grew up in the poorest parts of the Philippines where they couldn't afford liquor, so they would mix rubbing alcohol and Sprite. They were just gangsta like that, right? So for her, like, Hennessy was nothing. So anyway, so for her having a headache, my mom, like, if you don't know what it's like to grow up with Asian parents, they worry about every little thing. Like, it doesn't matter. And so my mom is like, we have to take you to the ER. Something might be wrong with your head. And I'm like, well, of course something's wrong with her head, right? I'm like, and then my sister was like, I'm fine. It's just a headache. I get these all the time. It'll go away in a couple days. I just need to rest. And my mom is like adamant, like, you know, we're going to take you. And I'm like, Mom, you're going to bother people at the ER for like nothing, right? And so I looked at my sister. I'm like, you know what? Just go, because you know Mom's going to bother you until you do. So they go to the ER. A couple hours later, I get a text message from my sister. She's like, yeah, so it looks like they found a tumor in my brain. And I'm like, crap. This was just, what, 6 years after I went through my own cancer bout. And I'm like, okay. So I called the airline, canceled my flight, went to the ER to check up on her. And when I got there, she was like, oh, good news. The tumor isn't cancerous. Looks like I've had it since I was 14. It's actually in between the two halves of the brain on the surface. And the doctor says all they got to do is cut a hole, take it out, and I should be out of there within a couple of weeks. The only downside is they're going to have to put a metal plate in my head, but I think that's okay because I'll probably get better cell phone signal. Like, that's just how we make jokes, right? So knowing she was going to be okay, I flew back to Florida that Friday. That Monday, she went into surgery, and then that Tuesday, I called up her fiance. I'm like, hey, how's my sister? And he was like, oh, she's good. She woke up, recognized all of us. She even called your brother ugly, so we know her brain's still intact, right? She just couldn't move her extremities, and the doctor said it's probably the anesthesia, it's just probably still wearing off, but as soon as that wears off, she should be good to go. So I hung up the phone. That Thursday, I get a frantic phone call from my mom, and she's like, you need to come back. Somewhere in the middle of the night, a blood vessel hemorrhaged in her brain. They couldn't stop the bleeding, so they put her into an induced coma, rushed her back to the ICU, and we don't know what's going to happen. Just get back here as soon as you can. So I flew back to California that Friday. By that Sunday, the doctors had pronounced her brain dead. By that Monday, we had to pull the plug, and then by that Friday, I was burying my sister. Now, I know it's kind of like a bummer, like it's to bring this up, but I bring it up because, you know, you just never know when things will shift in your life, right? And with COVID, it kind of, remember, beginning of 2020 was kind of like just easy, like it was normal. And then come March, all of a sudden, one after the other, after the other. In fact, just think back to 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, you know, Russia invades Ukraine. Like, we wake up, we're like, oh, by the way, yeah, right? Like, it's just, there it was. And you, when you have this time to be around people that you love, like you do right now, like, don't ever let a moment go by that you don't let somebody know just how much they mean to you. Like, things can change so quickly. Like, and we get so used to, like, before the pandemic, I would tour colleges, and it was fine. But as the years went on and technology got better, the more I started seeing people do this, like they're always on their phones, like at my shows. And then the pandemic happened, and then all we had were our phones. Like, that was it. Like, suddenly everything was virtual, everything was Zoom, everything was, you know, everything was staying at home, and all we had was our technology, right? And now that we have the time to be back with people again, around people, don't ever let that moment go by, right? Like, for some of you who were seniors in 2020, I feel bad for you because you probably didn't get a chance to go to your prom, you didn't get to go, you know, do a walk, and it sucks. And so I hope that you guys become the generation that's like, you know what, I'm not gonna let technology run us. You know, we've seen what that does, and we're gonna be present again. And so I wanted to do this poem for you guys, like, because I know that, like, you ever sit around a group of friends and like everyone's like on their phones, and you're just like, who the hell are you talking to? Everyone that matters is right here, and you're worried about a world that doesn't even exist, right? Right now, we have this hour together. We may never see each other again, like legit, we probably may not. But for 1 hour, our lives are intertwined, and we can be together in this space. So whatever you had to do later or what you had to do earlier, don't worry about that. Be in the moment and be there, because just like that, it'll go away. So I'm gonna do this poem. It's without a doubt the hardest poem I'd had to write, but I think it's necessary, and you know, yeah. When the snow falls in the winter, the woolly caterpillar crawls into a crevice and freezes to death. Its blood stops flowing, its lungs hardens into ice, its heart comes slowly to a halt. The heart is always the last to go. But when the snow melts in the spring, the ice thaws from its ventricles, the crystals dissolves from its lungs, and just as slowly as it died, the woolly caterpillar awakens and comes back to life. For 120 hours, we waited for my sister to wake up. My family mumbling prayers around the doctor who tells us she fell into a coma when a blood vessel hemorrhaged, and my father hasn't stopped praying since. My stepfather searching the eyes of doctors for the answers to those prayers, my siblings pushing me into the room as though I could perform a miracle, my mother making twin towers of my arms the way she crashed into them now, while I attempted to believe that my faith far exceeds science and God would awaken her somehow. Awaken, sweet sister. Tell me that my tears the size of mustard seeds will fall upon your cheek and move the mountain of swelling in your brain. Tell me that the same God who makes all things possible can still live up to his name, because right now that name belongs to your mother, who's cursing God for being too coward to make up his own mind as she stares at the medical forms granting the hospital permission to let you die. If he wants her, then take her, she says. Who am I to decide? And by her side is your fiancé, whose fists are stones he's ready to throw if the doctors mention organ donation just one more time. But your father, he sits still praying at your bedside, wrapping rosaries around your hands and tucking prayer cards behind your neck. God will resurrect my daughter, he says. Please, God, tell me she'll resurrect. How do I respond? How do I agree when the tubes of your IV intertwines around my throat, strangles my voice every time I plead? Awaken, sweet sister. Make this poem easier to write. Tonight, pull out the respirator in your throat and speak the words that will end this poem brighter than how it begun. Remove the tubes and we'll blow kisses into your veins that you may know where the true source of your life comes from, how it comes from your heart, how in this hurricane world you broke into tiny pieces, dropped them like care packages on our laps. You always had enough of it to give, which is why there are 200 people in the waiting room now ready to give it back in case you needed to live. But on the seventh day, The doctor gave us the results of the last test my sister will ever take, and I swear I'm not built for earthquakes like that. My knees buckling like a bridge, my arms shaking too much to catch another one of my mother's crash landings. None of us was left standing. We were all falling through the cracks, falling until we hit the floor of her room that night. This is what rock bottom must look like. The nurse disconnecting her machines, our hands stretching to touch a part of her as we wailed, our tears dropping as fast as her heartbeat, our sanity vanishing with her breath. Faster it faded. My stepfather stroking her face, faster it faded. My father presses her hand to his cheek, faster it faded. We're still waiting on a miracle, faster it faded. My face planted to my mother's belly, mommy, this hurts, faster it faded, and then it was finished. The monitors dropped to 0, and as her breath emptied and her heartbeat slowed, her fiancé removes the ring from her finger, ties it to his necklace, and says, how fitting. It was her heart that was the last to go. It was silent after that, silent as my mother reaches over to close her daughter's eyes. My stepfather releases a long-awaited sigh. My sibling straightens the creases in her blanket while my father unravels the rosary from her hands, takes the prayer cards from behind her neck and slips them into his pocket, places a kiss on her forehead, her chest, and both her shoulders. Put in a good word to God for us, he says. And that's when I knew that all along we had failed to see the light at the end of this tunnel she was going through, because while we were praying for her awakening, the awakening was really meant for us, to remind us that life is a coma we can still choose to wake up from. The faith means not having to wait for the sun to come, because sometimes the sun doesn't come, but we can still rise on our own. Her last breath has already blown life into the candles of our bones, with nothing more but a wish that we may live more fully. The woolly caterpillar freezes to death in the winter and comes back to life in the spring. For 14 years, it goes through the same cycle of awakening, waiting until the final year when its work is complete, then spins itself into a cocoon to be reborn a moth and fly away for good. So sleep now, sweet sister. You've surrendered your life for too many winters. We'll take it from here. Sleep now, wherever you wake. May you be reborn with wings on your back, fly into the sun, knowing when our own winter ends, spring will come and we'll see each other again. But until then, yeah, put in a good word to God for us. I'm sorry. And you're like, Asia, how are you gonna make us laugh 1 minute and then like make us try to cry like the next? Like, it's okay. I think you should go through every emotion you could possibly feel in one day, because it makes you feel like you had a complete day, right? Like someone asks you, like, hey, what'd you do today? Oh my God, I laughed, I cried, I did everything. You ever go to sleep crying like somebody like breaks up with you or something, and then you go to bed after like having like a really big cry, and then like you wake up and you're like, that was the most refreshing nap ever. Like, cry sleep is awesome. I know, I'm trying to make light of things. Love is about trust. Well, actually, this is for the fellas, all right? Love is about trust. Want to test it? Don't clear your browser history. Everybody needs that one person. Listen, everybody needs that one person, your ride or die person, that if something were to happen to you, like in the event of my demise, I have certain friends who will know exactly what to do with all the devices that I have. And then like, okay, Operation Wipeout. Like, you don't want stuff flying around. When you love someone, love even their sickness. My wife's sickness is Target. Like, for how many, okay, raise your hand if you're like a Target, like obsessive. Like how many of you like are obsessed with Target? See, some of you, that's the problem with this world, right? Like, the other day I was in the car and we were outside of Target, and I looked at my wife and said, okay, what do we need? She's like, okay, well, we need to get like hand sanitizer, I need to get some paper towels, I need to get headache medicine. I go, that's it, right? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, that's it, right? Like, we're gonna go in there, get what we need and get out, right? And she's like, I mean, I don't know, I might find something. I'm like, you see, and that's how I end up at Target for 3 hours. And then, see, and y'all are laughing because then you get home and then you bought all this stuff except for the things that you went in there to go buy. Like, I'm looking at my wife like, how come you bought like a porcelain pineapple? What the hell is this for? She's like, well, it was on sale. I go, it doesn't mean you buy it. Like, I would write haikus about your endless beauty, but don't have enough. Yeah. my sister, my sister was notorious, you guys, for wanting me and my wife to have kids. Like, she wanted us to have kids so bad that, like, every time we would visit California, she'd push me and my wife into the guest room. She's like, don't come out till you've conceived. And I'm like, that's disturbing as hell, right? But, you know, with testicular cancer, like, there was a possibility we were never gonna have kids. We kept trying, and it just wasn't happening. 2 years, though, after my cancer surgery, we managed to get pregnant, and my sister got all ecstatic. She's like, oh my God, you have to name your kid after a hotel in Vegas, because, like, she loves Vegas, right? And I'm like, first of all, I'm not naming my kid Bellagio, okay? And she's like, well, there's a lot of cool names, like Caesar, Arya, and I'm like, oh, those will work, right? Arya, Game of Thrones, all that, right? Got super excited about it, and then 2 months into our pregnancy, I remember we were driving home from a Christmas party, and my wife is like, oh, hurry up and get home. I gotta pee, like, really, really badly. So we sped home. When I got home, and she went to the bathroom, and she was like, Asia, get in here. And that's kind of where this poem picks up from. You know, this is also kind of a hard poem to write, but the thing is, this was the first time I wrote about this. This is the first time this happened. It actually happened a few times until we actually had the kid that we have now. And so it's always tough, especially for my wife. Like, I would look, and, you know, and I know that she's one of those people, she's very introverted, so she doesn't always speak what she's feeling. But you could see that the things that she was going through in that time, and to this day, it's still hard on her. So this was a poem that I wrote, and she took it a lot better than I did, because I was like yelling and screaming and mad at God, like, you know, how you let this happen. And then, but my wife was just like, she was like, don't worry, one day, and then we had our kid. So this is the poem. The shower has been running for over an hour. When I find her, she's sitting cross-legged at the far end of the bathtub, and without looking up, she says, the blood has finally slowed down. These were the first words she's spoken since the hospital. I'm sure she's been waiting to speak until now, at least here, with the water streaming down her face. There's no way for me to tell if she's been crying. She says, remind me tomorrow to cancel the baby registry. What am I supposed to say? I'm supposed to be good with words, but right now, there's a bright pink river snaking its way towards the drain, and I can't get my tongue to paddle us upstream back into her womb where we left our happiness yesterday. I read the story of a 12-year-old boy, locked for 2 years in the bathroom, the light switch covered with duct tape to keep him from turning on the lights when they found him. He was too weak to climb out of the bathtub on his own. Before that, I read the story of a 3-year-old child hung upside down and beaten with a frying pan, then left to die on the floor while his parents fucked on the air mattress next to him. Before that, I read the story of a 6-year-old girl who felt the only way to overcome the bullying was to hang herself with a jump rope. A jump rope. At what point did she feel so ignored? She felt the only way to be heard was to turn that jump rope into a cord, tie that cord around her voice, anchor it to the heavens, and play telephone with God. Sweet, sweet girl, if only my wife would have heard you. She would have answered that call. She would have shown you how to use that jump rope properly. It's why I don't tell her these stories of these children born into monsters and afraid to sleep in the dark, because it would only remind her there's a nightlight we bought for the nursery that will never be used. It's even one of those nightlights that light up the ceiling with tiny stars that night. We slept in each other's arms, our bodies entwined into a figure eight of infinity, because that's how loud we dialed up the silence. And the only words of comfort I could muster was to tell her we'll just be the best aunt and uncle to everyone else's kids. Like this was some sort of consolation prize. Sometimes the math just doesn't add up. On one side is a child wanting nothing more than a safe place to sleep. On the other, our parents staring at a crib they will never get to assemble. My God, can you not see this? Can you not do something to close the distance? Or at least tell me what to say to my wife to lift her up. When an empty womb feels so heavy, all she can do is collapse in the corner of our bathtub that Sunday. As I sat in church with my arms crossed, I glanced over to find her on her knees, her surrender telling me that sometimes the only way up is to hit the ground. The whispered prayers will reach heaven further than my screams, and for 2 years she did this, not once getting loud, stacked each prayer on top of the other until it was high enough to pierce the clouds, and finally he answered, his cross appearing in the window of that positive pregnancy test. And now I'm bent over the same bathtub I found her years before, giving our 2-year-old son a bath. He splashes water on the floor, laughs when I get angry, and when we finish, when I tell him to put his bath toys away, he kisses each one just before he drops it into the basket. He knows how to love because he is loved. He knows how to love because he is loved. I pray every child could be as lucky. Despite stereotype, not all Asians are good at math. That's why this haiku has 27 syllables. I like that you guys like my haikus. Yeah, you see, makes me worth writing. This one I wrote when my son was, before this, I love the school that my son's at now, but before he started kindergarten, he was in something called pre-kindergarten, and the teacher there was just really like lazy, right? And she came to us one time, she was like, you know, do you guys might want to get your son checked out because he's always so busy and kind of like runs around and hyperactive, and you know, maybe there's, you know, I don't know if he can get like a diagnosis or whatever. And I'm like, first of all, he's too young for them to even study that, right? Like, you're an idiot, right? Like, they don't check for things like that until they're like 4 or 5. Like, my son was like 2. So I wrote this. I said, you think he needs pills because he can't sit still. Maybe you're just boring. I asked my son what he wants to be when he grows up. He said, happy. Legit, he did. My son's a psycho, you guys. So he's 8 years old. Okay, let me take you back. So when my son was born, he had all these spots on him, like these, like they call them cafe au lait spots. They look like little tiny freckles, and there was just a lot. They're like not super noticeable, but when you look close, they look like really tiny freckles. And as he grows older, like they start to become a little bit more pronounced. You can start to see them even more. Some are huge, some are like little tiny ones. They're just like speckles all over him. And when the doctor saw that, he's like, you guys you need to see a geneticist because he might have something called neurofibromatosis. Now, neurofibromatosis, for the most part, is harmless, right? It's a genetic condition, but what it is if you have the rarest case of neurofibromatosis, like you happen to fall in that 3% of the worst case scenario, you can start to develop a ton of tumors. If you've ever seen pictures of people that look like they have a bunch of bubbles on their face and looks like their face is melting off, that's like the worst case of NF. And the doctors told us that by the time he's 3 or 4, you'll already know that might happen. If he doesn't have that by then you guys are pretty safe. I'm like, okay, good. But still, he had all these like spots. Now, even if we have to get him checked every year to see if any tumors are growing. However, there are other things that are side effects to NF. Number 1, low muscle tone. Like, my kid could not walk until he was like a year and 7 months, right? Most kids are walking at like a year old. It took him like a year, 7 months. He couldn't jump until he was like 3 or 4. And then he didn't even start riding a bike until like last year. I took the pandemic time to like teach him how to ride a bike, and now he knows how. But even now, he's still kind of wobbly, and you could tell, like, with other kids his age, right? Other 8-year-olds are like bigger. They're like on monkey bars and sliding, and my kid can't do that, right? Like, so he goes to OT and physical therapy now. He also has ADHD because of that. And ADHD was something that I had a really, really hard time dealing with because I know that I might have it, just not diagnosed. But for me to raise someone who has it is very, very tough. And if you have ADHD, I hate the fact that they say it's attention deficit, because it's not a deficit. It's attention, it's a lot of attention on one thing. And that's what happens to my son. He gets hyper-focused. And then that's, and I had to learn that, like, he just learns a little bit differently. And so he struggled with math. He was struggling with a lot of stuff, but yet the weaknesses he has here, he's strong like over here. So perfect example, last year, he won the Tech Whiz Award at his school. And the teacher calls us and says, just want to let you guys know that your son won Tech Whiz Award this year. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. She's like, oh, yeah, it's great. But do you want to know how he won the Tech Whiz Award? I'm like, I was kind of afraid to ask because I know how my son is. I'm like, how do you win? He goes, well, we were in the computer lab, and somehow or the other, he found a way to make himself an administrator on one of the computers. We've brought IT in, and they don't know how to remove him. He has access to the grades. He has access to the answers to the tests. Not that he uses it. He doesn't know. He just somehow or the other, but when you go on that computer, it says administrator, there's his name. And the only reason why he can't go in now is because he forgot what password he chose. Like, and I'm not, and I told the teacher, I go, oh, I'm not shocked, because when he was 4, I saw a $200 charge on my credit card, right? And I'm like, why is there a $200 charge from Amazon? That same day, this humongous box shows up at my door. I bring it into the house, I cut it open, and it was the exact same snow cone machine that they have at school. And not like the toy kind, like it's a legit, like tall one, like it looks nice, like it has like that thing, but like it actually works as a like legit snow cone machine. So I said, Eris, did you order the snow cone machine? He's like, yes. And I'm like, why did you order a snow cone machine? Because I wanted snow cones. And I'm like, how did you even do this? And she was like, I used your phone, Daddy. And I'm like, here. I gave him my phone and I said, show me. And I'm like, first of all, he can't even spell, right? Like, how? So he turned it on. He doesn't even know his numbers. He was 4 years old at the time. Types in my passcode, and I'm like, you don't even know numbers, and yet you know my passcode somehow. Gets in, opens up Amazon, and then goes to the search bar, presses the microphone button, and goes, snow cone machine. And then all these snow cones showed up, and then he just scrolled till he found the one he wanted, then did one click buy, and then before you know it, I'm being charged $200. So I looked at my wife was like, dude, just hide it, and then like, we'll give it to him for Christmas, right? And so I'm like, that's fine, you know, because we you know, he wants it. So we hid it, and then Christmas time came around like 3 months later, and then we bring it out, and I'm like, open it, Eris, and he opens it, and I'm thinking he's gonna get all excited because we told him you know, and he opened it up, he goes, oh yeah, the snow cone machine, I bought this. And I'm like, I swear to God, dude. Like, okay, and then number two, the kid's horrible at math, right? Like, I mean, not horrible, but like he gets bad grades at school in math. And yet, yesterday, or 2 days ago, I said, Eris, we gotta go to bed. You need to stop playing Roblox, and you need to put that away, and we're gonna go to bed. And he goes, and I said, you know, it's already 8 o'clock. And he goes, no, it's not. It's 7:53. I have 7 minutes left. I'm like, how are you able to subtract from time, and yet you're getting subtraction failings at school? Like, see, I know you can do it. You just wanna, like, do this to me. Anyway, so when he was born, I wanted to write a poem for him, you know, I mean, of course, right? But I just didn't want this like cliche, like father loves son poem. And if you're an artist or whatever, if you're a poet or whatever, don't force your work, man. Like if there's something you want to write about, but for some reason it's just not hitting you yet, leave it alone. It'll show up. And this poem showed up. First day of school, first day of kindergarten. I was getting him ready for school, and I saw all the spots that were on his body, and I put a hoodie on him, and I said, okay, I didn't want kids to laugh at him because kids are cruel, right? I don't want them to be like, oh, why you have all these dots? And so my son starts complaining. He's like, Daddy, it's hot outside. I mean, we live in Florida. And he's like, you know, it's going to be hot. I'm like, it's okay, Eris. You'll be in the classroom. You'll be fine. Just wear the hoodie. And he's like whining and crying. And, no, it's going to be hot. I'm going to sweat. And I realized in that moment that I was projecting my insecurities on him. He has no idea yet what it means to be made fun of, and here I am, like already putting that in his head. And I felt so ashamed about myself, like, and so I wrote this poem, and I dedicate this to him, but I dedicate it to all of you. All of us in here have something about ourselves that we are very self-conscious about, right? Someone once said to me, nothing anyone can say or do to me is worse than what I've said and done to myself, right? Like if you think about it, right? Like we all have that one thing that we don't like, right? And you're afraid to tell people about it. And we live in a world right now where, you know, I feel bad for like I hated when I was growing up, adults would always be like, well, the times were tougher when I was younger. I'm like, no, man, like I look at you guys, I'm like, you guys are way stronger than us because, like, for example, bullying. If you're gonna get bullied nowadays, like back then, we would get bullied, then we get to go home and we get a rest from the bullying before we get bullied again the next day. Now, it follows you online, it follows you like on social media, like it's there all the time, right? And then we also live in a world where there's like FOMO and everyone is looking at like, oh, I gotta look like this and I gotta live like that. And I'm here to tell you that, you know, we don't need any more of them. We need one of you, right? So whatever it is you feel like is a fault or whatever it is you don't like about yourself, embrace it, right? Because that's what makes you you. And this is actually one of my favorite poems. I hope you enjoy it. But yeah, every year, there are roughly 130 million babies and 150 billion stars born in the entire known universe. In a span of 9 years, my wife and I had 3 known miscarriages. All that to say, we spent a lot of time floating in the empty void of space, wondering why the numbers never stacked in our favor. When we finally caught the comet, the geneticist saw the 100 tiny birthmarks that freckled my son's entire body and told us this was a symptom of neurofibromatosis, a rare genetic condition that can cause benign tumors to grow in the brain, spinal cord, and nerves. At its worst, so many tumors can grow, it can sag his skin and make his face look like it's melting, and I'm wondering, how will I handle the tumors if they come? If I can't even stand to look at the birthmarks that are already there, fast forward 4 years. It's his first day of school, and he's throwing a tantrum because I'm making him wear a hoodie in this 90-degree weather, but I can't tell him I'm trying to hide the spots. It's just I know too well people's tendency to be cruel, how they like to chop down trees just to make more handles to mount their axe, and I won't let him get whittled down by sharp tongues like that, watching them take from him and turn him into something that he's not until he slowly becomes the weapon that's turning on himself. I know too well that kind of self-hate, and right now I'm just doing my best to control the fate of what's meant to become of my son, so please just put this hoodie on because you can't yet see your birthmarks for what they truly are. But just then, while standing there naked, he held up his arms and said, "Daddy, they look like stars." Then pointing to the biggest one on his ribs, he said, "Daddy, this one looks like a spaceship. So forgive me for failing to compose myself when he started making up stories of the spaceship flying through the galaxy. This is his body. Have I forgotten how much energy it takes to create a planet? Have I forgotten about the black hole that can suck the life out of an empty womb? Have I forgotten about the empty space that was left behind after the first time I dismantled the unused crib in our bedroom? How dare me think I know more about this universe than you do? How dare me forget all the stars that fizzled out before you came shining through? You were born, you are here, riddled with spots is proof you exist. It's why they call them birthmarks to begin with. So how lucky are we that you have more than most? Miracle boy, I know one day you might want to eclipse yourself into that hoodie to hide behind the moon as they stare and point. Well, let them stare and point the same way they stare and point at stars in wonder and awe. Remind them they're merely specks of dust in the vastness of your presence. And when the bullies come with their meteor shower of insults aiming to hit you at your core, swing your Milky Way arms to the bridge of their nose so they will always know, that you are the Big Bang your mother and I have been waiting for, you walking constellation, you light speed traveler, you rocket of hope. I've gone on with this metaphor for too long, I know, but every year there are roughly 130 million babies and 150 billion stars born in the entire known universe. All that to say, no matter how worse your condition becomes, we will always love you until infinity. You are our son, our 1 in 150 billion. All right. You guys okay with one more poem? Is that cool? Yeah? Before I do, I just want to let you guys know, you guys can see me like online. I do have a website, theasiaproject.com. That's The Asia Project, not The Asian Project. If you go to theasianproject.com, it's a website that sells bowls and noodles. Like, that's not me, okay? I didn't want you to go on there and be like, oh, that's his hustle. No, that's not. That's not us. I used to tour with my brother-in-law, and we used to do music with poetry a lot. But when COVID happened, he couldn't do the virtual shows with me, so he had to take on like a regular job. He had to make ends meet, and now he has to stay at that regular job, so we haven't been able to tour together like we used to, but I do miss him. If you want to hear how we do that, we're on Spotify. Just look up the Asia Project. All our poems are on there along with music. Like it's dope. Like I like it. And also I'm on YouTube. Like you can just look up the Asia Project. All my music videos are on there, and you can check those out. Also, all the other social media stuff: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. I'm barely on Twitter. I feel like I'm talking to myself when I'm on Twitter. I don't ever get on. I'm not really on Facebook too much. I mean, I am, but like no one ever goes there really to look at band stuff. But I'm on Instagram a lot. So if you are on Instagram and you love Instagram, please follow me on IG. I'm there a lot. I put up a lot of stories and stuff. That being said, and I'm too old for TikTok, so don't even try to look for me there. Like that's not for me, man. Like I can't. Like I know. Like that's the thing. But yeah, follow me on all those other channels. I have one poem that I wrote during the pandemic. From the time I did this show last time till now, this was a poem that I wrote. I don't know it by heart, so I'm going to read this poem to you guys also. but it was kind of just in honor of, this is not one of those like, oh my God, you close out the show with a bang type of thing. It's more like, this is a poem that meant a lot to me because I wrote it during the pandemic. And, but before I do, we're gonna close out with my last 3 haikus. If you have not liked my haikus up until now, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. These are my favorite ones. And if these don't hit, then you know, you're just too serious, all right? For the rest of you who like the haikus, enjoy. I believe there's no such things as dogs, said the dyslexic atheist. See, some of y'all looking blankly. Just wait. You'll get it. And then when you do, like, oh, how many still don't get it? I'll read it again. I believe there's no such things as dogs, said the dyslexic atheist. Okay. Practice safe sex. Use protection, like a helmet. Hashtag headboards hurt. Now this one I wrote, I was going through a really hard time, and I decided to write this as a mantra. So for all of you who go through the same kind of hard times, take this haiku with you and recite it to yourself when you're going through the hard time, and that way you can kind of get through it. Push through the pain, no matter how hard. Victory will be yours. Pooping. Whatever. All right, give it up for yourselves for coming out, hanging out here, and chilling with me, and doing poetry. You can do better than that. This is for you, not for me. And give it up for the poets too that performed tonight, and give it up for them and for opening, and that was amazing. I love seeing, yeah. Actually, let's do this too before I forget. Let's do a quick like IG shot too. I'm just gonna do a panorama, right? Y'all have to act like we're having a really, really good time. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh wait, actually stop. Let me just do it as a video. All right, that'll be better. Shut up. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Cool, that's how we fake things online, all right? What a crazy show! How long has it been? The isolation, the closing in, would you say days, weeks, maybe months? What if I told you our numbers have been off by a long shot? Because I can't remember the last time I didn't catch us all looking down. How long has it been now? We, staring at the screens, divided always by glass. What if I told you this is not the first time we started wearing masks, our lives so heavily filtered, as if revealing our true selves is a virus we dare not catch. My God, we have gotten so good at being detached, planning for tomorrows and the tomorrows after that. Social distancing is a concept we have always known. We just called it by a different name, called it work, called it busyness, called it not enough hours in the day. What if I told you this is not the first time we have sheltered in place, on the street, on the plane, on the subway, noise-canceling headphones pressed so deep into our ears. But now I wonder, what good is noise canceling when the streets are quiet? So many moments squandered like breath, so many memories that never became, taken from us like a gift we never deserved. How much have we missed? The times we could have shook hands or hugged or kissed. Let us always remember this. When the shelves at the grocery store were as empty as our hearts, when the loneliness closed in like the house we are forced to stay, let us always remember this. These days, when the tomorrows come and we have nowhere to be, these days, when the steps felt heavy, the walk up the driveway to drop off groceries at our parents' front porch, watching them wave goodbye from behind the window, let us always remember this. So when the gates reopen, we can burst through the doors like the last day of school, run quickly to those people, our arms reaching past that 6 feet gap, and make a promise to never let go. I know I can't wait for the day I can see you all once more, to cherish every step I take towards the microphone and feel your love more presently than I've ever felt it before. Once more to the poets, to the performers, dreaming of the open road, yearning to again fill theaters with laughter. Once more to the teachers, running their hands along the empty desk, the chalk dust settling for far too long now. To the students, trying so hard to get through this somehow, wishing they spent more time looking up from their books. Once more to the restaurants, to the cooks, sobbing in their empty kitchens, waiting for the day to set the tables again. Once more to the hospitals and first responders, working the shifts that won't seem to end, the weariness of healing us from a distance, hidden behind their masks. But I promise, with all that I have, we will be back. We will remove those masks and show the world our smiles. We will reach out and beg to stay in that embrace for a little while. We will be back, stepping out from behind that glass, and we will cry and we will laugh once more, once more, once more. Utah State, thank you guys so much for having me. God bless y'all. Good night.
Let's get one more round of applause for Asia. Thank you guys so much for coming tonight. The books on the tables, you can have them if you see one you want. One really intrigued your interest there, you know, the encyclopedias and stuff. Also, take some more food. We have a lot of food left. Take some home, leftovers. Yeah, thanks for coming.